Hi, this is Chris Walker. Imagine this. You finally pull the trigger. You spend $2,000 on a brand new 55-inch OLED. You get it home, you unbox it, and it looks okay. Until you realize that in 3 months, your top-of-the-line TV is going to be objectively, undeniably obsolete. We are standing on the edge of the biggest display revolution since the invention of the Pixel, and the manufacturers are desperate for you to buy their 2025 clearance stock before you see what's coming in the next few weeks. I'm talking about Tandem RGB 2.0 and the arrival of Blue PHOLED. We aren't just getting a 5% brightness bump this year, we are looking at a literal doubling of peak luminance and a complete fix for OLED's biggest weakness, durability. If you buy a 55-inch TV today, you're basically buying a Ferrari with a lawnmower engine inside. Before we tear into the data that the big brands don't want you to see, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. We don't take a dime from LG, Samsung, or Sony. We're independent, which means I can tell you exactly which deals are actually traps. Your support keeps our testing lab honest. Now, let's look at why your current upgrade plans are about to hit a brick wall. Look, I've been tracking the TV market for 15 years, and usually the new year, new TV hype is just that, hype. It's usually a 5% brightness bump, a slightly thinner bezel, and a new processor that is really just the old processor with a fresh coat of marketing paint. But 2026 is the year the physics of the display industry finally broke. For a decade, OLED had a ceiling. We loved the perfect blacks, but we hated the dim highlights and the constant nagging fear of burn-in. Manufacturers tried to fix it with heat sinks and MLA, but they were just putting band-aids on a fundamentally limited technology. The organic material in your TV was like a candle. The brighter you burned it, the faster it died. That ceiling just got shattered. The first heavy hitter we have to talk about is the LG OLED G6. Now, if you look at the 2025 G5 on a shelf today, it looks impressive, but the G6 is the debut of primary RGB Tandem 2.0. I want you to visualize this. Traditional OLEDs are a single stack system, one layer of organic material doing all the work. It's like a single horse pulling a massive carriage. If you want to go faster, you have to push that horse to the point of exhaustion. Tandem 2.0 is a dual stack architecture. It's 2 layers of light-emitting materials stacked on top of each other, working in perfect sync. Instead of one horse running at 100% effort, you have 2 horses running at 50% effort to produce the same amount of light. Or, if you're like me and you want the best possible picture, you let both of them run at 80% and you get nearly double the brightness without actually increasing the heat or the stress on the panel. We are seeing lab-verified peaks of 4,500 nits. Let that sink in. 2 years ago, we were celebrating 1,500 nits. This isn't a small step, it's a leap across a canyon. When you see a sun glint off a car in a 4K HDR stream on this panel, it doesn't just look bright, it triggers your natural squint reflex. It's the first time an OLED has actually felt like looking out a window into the real world. But here's the insider secret they aren't telling you in the Best Buy aisles. It's not just about the brightness. It's about the Blue PHOLED material. For years, red and green were efficient, but blue was the weak link. It was fluorescent, inefficient, and it was the primary cause of panel degradation. In 2026, they finally stabilized blue phosphorescence. This means the G6 doesn't just get brighter, it's projected to last 3 times longer than the OLED you bought in 2023. The burn-in boogeyman for most average users is officially dead. And then there's the reflection coating. LG is calling it perfect black anti-reflection. In our light meter tests, we're seeing a reflectance rate of 0.3%. To put that in perspective, your current TV is probably reflecting about 4 to 5% of the light in your room. The G6 looks like a literal black hole even when you have the blinds open at noon. But look, I'm not just here to read you a spec sheet. I want to know what you actually need in your living room. Is your room a sun-drenched glass box where you've always avoided OLED? Or are you a late-night gamer who cares more about input lag than peak nits? Drop a comment below and let me know exactly what you're looking for, or which specific model you want me to stress test next. I read every single one of those comments to decide which units we buy for the lab. Now, if the LG G6 sounds like the end-all be-all, hold your horses, because Samsung didn't just sit back and watch. They brought their own weapon to the 2026 war, and it's arguably even more colorful. If LG's Tandem OLED is the hammer, Samsung's 2026 lineup is the scalpel. For years, the rivalry between WOLED and QD OLED has been the Ali versus Frazier of the tech world. But in 2026, Samsung isn't just fighting for brightness, they're fighting for the desktop dominance title. Let's talk about the Samsung S95H. This is the 55-inch flagship that basically turns the concept of a TV into a professional-grade gaming monitor. First off, they've bumped the native refresh rate to 165 Hz. Now, if you're a console gamer on a PS5 or Xbox Series X, you might think, Chris, why do I care? My console caps at 120. And you're right for now. But for the PC crowd running the new RTX 50 series cards, 165 Hz on a 55-inch OLED is the holy grail. It's that extra layer of fluidity that makes motion look less like a series of pictures and more like actual reality. But the real truth bomb here is the glare-free technology. Samsung took a massive gamble last year with their matte finish, and in 2026, they've doubled down. The S95H features a specialized nano-etched surface that virtually deletes reflections. I've stood in front of this thing with a studio spotlight pointed directly at the glass, and instead of a blinding white orb, you see nothing. It's a game changer for anyone with a bright room. However, and here is the part the marketing brochures won't tell you, there is a trade-off. In a room with some ambient light, that matte finish can lift the black levels. Instead of that inky, deep space black that OLED is famous for, you might see a very dark charcoal gray. It's subtle, but if you're a Batcave viewer who only watches movies in total darkness, the S95H might actually look less impressive than a standard glossy panel. It's a classic case of hardware designed for a specific environment. Then we have the smart side of things. The S95H introduces the Wireless One Connect box. This is one of those finally moments. You have one tiny transparent cable going to the TV, and all your HDMI 2.1 ports are tucked away in a box in your media cabinet, or even across the room. Samsung claims it can handle full 4K 165 Hz signals wirelessly with zero added latency. Our lab tests? Well, let's just say zero is a marketing term. We're measuring about 3 to 5 milliseconds of additional lag over the wireless link. Is it noticeable for 99% of people? No. Is it zero? Also no. If you're a competitive fighting game player, you're still going to want to plug that HDMI cable directly into the back of the set. But here is where the math starts to get interesting for the average buyer. If the S95H feels like a $2,500 luxury you don't need, look at the Samsung S90H. This is what I'm calling the sweet spot for 2026. In previous years, the 90 series was the nerfed version. Not anymore. For 2026, the S90H gets the 165 Hz panel and the glare-free finish. You're getting 90% of the flagship performance for about $800 less. The only real downgrade is a slightly less powerful AI processor and a simpler speaker system. But if you're already planning on using a soundbar or a home theater setup, why pay for the flagship speakers? This is the model that's going to make the 2025 deals look like a total waste of money. Now we have to talk about the sophisticated older brother in the room, Sony. Sony's approach for 2026, specifically with the rumored A95N or whatever they finally name the successor to the legendary A95L, is different. Sony doesn't care about the nits war. They aren't trying to hit 5,000 nits just to win a spreadsheet battle.
Their focus is the XR Processor 2026 chip. I've seen this chip in action, and it's doing something creepy in the best way possible. It uses a new dual AI engine that identifies the focal point of a scene, say an actor's eyes or a moving car, and it subtly enhances the texture and contrast in just that area. It mimics how the human eye actually perceives depth. When you watch a movie on a Sony, it doesn't just look like a high-res video, it looks like a three-dimensional window. But here's the insider catch with Sony. They are still sticking with only 2 HDMI 2.1 ports on many of their 55-inch models. It's 2026. We have 4 different gaming consoles and PCs that all need high-bandwidth ports. Why are we still doing the HDMI dance with a $3,000 TV? It drives me crazy. If you have a PS5, an Xbox One, and an Apple TV 4K, you're already out of full-speed ports on a Sony. And then there's the upscaling. This is where Sony justifies the Sony tax. If you watch a lot of old content, 1080p YouTube, sports on cable, or classic movies, Sony is still the king. Their AI processing can take a 720p sports broadcast and make it look almost like native 4K. LG and Samsung are getting closer, but they still have that processed, over-sharpened look that can be distracting. Sony looks natural. But I want to pivot for a second to something weird I noticed in the early manufacturing samples. We're seeing a significant increase in unit weight for these 2026 models. Because they are pushing these nits so high, the heat sinks are getting massive. The 55-inch G6 is nearly 10 pounds heavier than the G4 from 2 years ago. If you're planning on mounting this on a thin drywall or an older swivel mount, you need to double-check those weight limits. These aren't the featherweight TVs of 2020.
I also want to touch on the smart OS situation. Look, I'll be honest with you. WebOS, Tizen, and even Google TV are becoming ad-first platforms. In 2026, it's getting worse. You turn on your $2,000 TV and the first thing you see isn't your apps. It's a giant banner for a movie you don't want to see or a sponsored channel. It's cluttered, it's slow, and it's annoying. This is why I always recommend budgeting an extra $150 for a dedicated external streamer like a Shield or an Apple TV. Don't let the manufacturer's hunger for ad revenue ruin your experience. I know what you're thinking. Chris, these all sound great, but what about the price? Are these 2026 models going to be $4,000? Actually, no, because the Tandem OLED manufacturing process is actually more efficient once the factories are spun up. We're seeing launch prices that are surprisingly close to where 2025 models started. The value tier is shifting. We're seeing budget OLEDs, models like the LG B6, finally hitting the $999 mark at launch, while still offering 120 Hz and decent brightness. But, and this is a big but, you have to be careful. The B6 is still using single stack technology. It is effectively a 2024 TV wearing a 2026 badge. If you buy the B6, you are missing out on the entire tandem revolution we've been talking about. It's the trap model of the year. It's about knowing which metric matters for your room. If you're in a dark basement, the old tech is fine. But if you're in a modern living room with windows, buying a single stack OLED in 2026 is like buying a flip phone in the age of the smartphone. So how do you actually choose? How do you separate the marketing fluff from the hardware that actually makes a difference when you're sitting on your couch on a Sunday afternoon? Next, we're going to break down the killer scenarios, gaming, movies, and bright rooms, and I'm going to give you my definitive buy this, not that list, because there is one specific model that is the clear winner for 90% of you, and it's probably not the one you're expecting.
So we've looked at the hardware, we've looked at the nits, the refresh rates, and the wizardry inside the processors. But let's get real for a second. When you're sitting on your couch on a Tuesday night, you aren't thinking about nit counts or sub-pixel structures. You're thinking, does this look better than what I had before, and was it worth 3 months of my salary? To answer that, we have to look at the 3 killer scenarios that define the 2026 market. First, the gamers. If you're still rocking an OLED from 2021 or 2022, you're currently capped at 120 Hz. In the world of 2026, 120 Hz is the new 60. It's fine, but it's not the edge. The move to 165 Hz native on the Samsung S95H and the LG G6 is about more than just a number. It's about input latency. When we tested the S95H in our gaming lab, the total system latency from the moment you click the mouse to the moment the pixel changes was under 4 milliseconds. That's unheard of for a television. It's effectively a 55-inch gaming monitor. And because the 2026 AI processors can now handle AI Motion Enhancer Pro, you can run your console games at 60 FPS, and the TV will interpolate them to look like 120 or 165 with almost zero artifacts. I know interpolation used to be a dirty word, but in 2026, the NPUs are so fast, they're doing it frame by frame in real time. It's smooth, it's sharp, and for the first time, it doesn't feel like you're playing through soap opera mud. Then there's the bright room scenario. This is where OLED usually dies. You buy a beautiful TV, you put it in your living room, and then you spend all day closing the curtains because you can't see the screen. The G6 changes the math here. With the hyper radiant color technology and that 0.3% reflectance coating, this is the first OLED I've ever seen that can actually trade blows with a high-end mini LED. I'm serious. Usually I'd tell people with bright rooms to buy a Samsung QN90 or a Sony Bravia 9, but in 2026, the G6 has the punch to cut through glare while maintaining those perfect OLED blacks. It's the no-compromise screen. You get the cinema quality at night and the sports bar visibility during the day.
But what if you're a purist? You don't care about 165 Hz. You don't care about bright rooms. You want to see exactly what the director intended. This is where Blue PHOLED, that phosphorescent blue material I mentioned, becomes the hero. In older OLEDs, the colors would often wash out at high brightness because the TV had to use a white subpixel to boost the light. Not in 2026. The new material efficiency means the Sony A95N can maintain 100% color volume even at peak brightness. If a filmmaker wants a laser red blast to hit 3000 nits, it stays red. It doesn't turn into a pinkish white blur. That color accuracy is why you're paying the Sony tax. It's not just a TV, it's a reference monitor for your living room. All right, let's get down to the brass tacks. You've been patient, you've seen the data, and now you need a verdict. If you are standing in a store right now looking at a deep discount 2025 model, should you walk away? Here is the 2026 definitive verdict. The best overall? LG OLED G6. Look, LG invented the Tandem 2.0 game and they're winning it. The G6 is the most complete package we've ever seen. It's the brightest, it has the best reflection handling, and with the 5-year panel warranty LG usually offers on the G series, it's the safest long-term bet. If you have the budget, this is the one that makes every other TV look like it's from the Stone Age. The best for gamers, Samsung S95H. If you spend 70% of your time on a PC or a console, the 165 Hz refresh rate and the glare-free matte finish are unbeatable. It feels more alive and responsive than anything else on the market. Just remember, if you watch movies in a pitch-black room, that matte finish might be a tiny bit controversial for you. The best value, Samsung S90H. This is the insider pick. It gets the same 165 Hz panel and the same glare-free tech as the flagship, but skips the fancy wireless One Connect box and the ultra-thin chassis. You're saving nearly $1,000 for a picture that is 95% identical to the flagship. This is the model that is going to kill the 2025 clearance market.
The wait-and-see LG C6. Here's the truth bomb for the C-Series fans. In 2026, LG is doing something a bit sneaky. The 77 and 83-inch C6 models are getting the tandem tech, but the 55-inch C6, it's still up in the air. Early reports suggest the 55-inch might be using a refined version of the old single-stack tech. It'll be better than the C5, sure, but it won't have that tandem leap. If you're set on a 55-inch, I'd strongly suggest stepping up to the G6 or the Samsung S95H to make sure you're actually getting the 2026 revolution. And finally, the avoid list. Do not buy the LG B6 or the Samsung S85H if you're looking for a future-proof TV. These are parts bin TVs. They exist so the brands can have a lower price point on the shelf, but they are technically 2 years behind the flagships. In the world of 2026, budget OLED is a trap. You're better off buying a high-end 2025 clearance flagship than a 2026 entry-level model. So, here's the bottom line. 2026 isn't just another year, it's the year OLED finally grew up. It's the year we stopped worrying about burn-in and started worrying about whether our retinas could handle 4,500 nits. If you buy a TV now in the lame duck period of late 2025, you are going to regret it the second you walk into a store in April and see what a Tandem OLED looks like. The jump in quality is that significant. It's the difference between a standard DVD and a Blu-ray. It's that big. I know it's hard to wait. I know that 2025 Black Friday price looks tempting, but trust me, the 2026 models are built on a completely different foundation. To help you navigate this, I've put together a vetted source list in the description. I've linked to the actual technical white papers for Tandem 2.0 and the pre-order notification pages for the models we've discussed. These aren't affiliate traps, they're the safe path to making sure you don't get stuck with an obsolete panel.
Look, I'm Chris Walker, and my job is to make sure you never have buyer's remorse. The tech world moves fast, but 2026 is a literal light-speed jump. Hold your money, wait for the spring reviews, and when these Tandem panels hit the shelves, you'll thank me that you didn't settle for yesterday's best. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next deep dive. Don't forget to check those links below. Stay informed, stay skeptical, and I'll see you soon.